Sometimes it's hard being a welder. What do you think about that? I would say that it's not really that hard to weld, for one. So whether you're a woman or a man, it really doesn't matter. You can weld. Obviously there's learning curve and you have to improve, but to reach a level where you make acceptable welds is not too difficult. I think the average person could do that if they wanted to. I would say that most of my challenges have come from being short and weak. That's pretty much the majority of my challenges. I can't do everything that some of the bigger, tougher guys can do. Some of the things that are challenging are lifting the tanks and rolling them around. That is an art form. Lifting the tanks onto the back of the welders is probably the toughest thing that I do, physically speaking. The rolls of wire can be heavy, things like that. Initially, they're very heavy, but they do get lighter because you get stronger and you get more used to it. Physical limitations are probably one of the bigger... I mean, I wouldn't say that I have a lot of challenges as a welder, but if I have any challenges, then physical limitations, being slightly shorter and weaker, would probably be one of them. I would like to point out that the ridge on my forehead was caused from my welding helmet. Yeah, very attractive. I'm dirty. I'm dirty from work. I didn't grow up with an interest in or exposure to elements within the shop. Someone who grew up in that environment and had a lot of exposure to that young is going to go into a welding shop and have more of that background knowledge that people who did grow up that way are going to kind of assume you know, or assume is common sense. If you are not exposed to those things growing up, you don't develop that, you don't have that kind of common sense. And that can be something that both men and women can face, but I think that women probably would tend to be more in that category. My boyfriend was teasing me about talking so much about clothes in my last video, but I am female, so we gotta talk about clothes, right? Here's a challenge that females face. Clothing. I mean, it is a real challenge. Like, a lot of the jackets are made for men, so my boss is very kind to provide me several jackets, but they go down to mid-thigh, and they're like wearing short dresses. Now, what was I talking about? Do you remember what I was talking about? Some examples of things that other people would consider to be common sense. To turn a gas line on and off, you have to have the handle in line with the line. Not having experience with that, I would think like this way is on and that way is off. So that was something that wasn't in my common sense reservoir. I think males and females can both have that challenge, but that is something that I experienced and think that a lot of women would experience. Usually it's all positive. I've never felt like I was less qualified or less valuable than any of the male welders. The people at my job are absolutely awesome. It's a family-run business. It's not like I'm one welder in a stack of 20 all lined up in a row in a big factory. I've had a very blessed and positive experience with welding, and I would definitely recommend if you're going to get into welding to get into a shop like the one where I am. I've heard horror stories about the big ones. Just be careful and try to find a good place that's going to treat you well, whether you're male or female. Make sure to interview your interviewer and choose a good place. I didn't have any experience, so he started me off less than his welders would normally start that had previous experience. Within the first couple weeks, he had bumped my pay up to then have me at that level of his normal welder's starting wage. It wasn't based on my gender, it was based on my experience. Thank you so much for joining me, and we'll see you next time.